Hello, everyone, and welcome to York Universe, the astronomy and astrophysics program written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. I'll be one of your hosts this evening. I am Julie Tomei, and I am joined by two special guests this evening. We have with us Bruce Waters and Ryan Marciniak. Hi, Bruce. Hi, Ryan.
Good evening.
Good evening. Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. We are broadcasting live from the Allan Carswell Observatory located at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. York Universe broadcasts every Monday night at 9 p.m. local Toronto time or Tuesday morning at 1 a.m. Universal Coordinated Time at the moment, since we are in daylight time. The York Universe production works in concert with our online public viewing program run by the Observatory team, which runs between the hours of 9 and 10 p.m. local Toronto time. You can head over to yorku.ca/science/observatory and follow the links to OPV with our online public viewing program. That's online public viewing and join in the chat. For any questions or comments that you have of our past shows, or if you have any suggestions for future topics, please send us an email at observe@yorku.ca. You can also connect with us on social media. On Instagram, we are at Yorku Observatory, and on Facebook at Allan I. Carswell OBS. All our programs are free, but if you would like to make a donation, you can head over to that website, www.yorku.ca/science/observatory. We'll be monitoring the chat room for questions, to post content if it comes up. The current weather is not great. So the images in the online public viewing this evening will be archival images, but they are beautiful images nonetheless. So Bruce, Ryan, welcome.
I
Thank you
think
very
we're
much.
coming, I think we're coming to the best time of year to observe in Canada. It's not, it's getting dark a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's not frigid cold,
Mm-hmm.
but it's cool enough that the air is a little bit more still. It's tough. It's tough being an astronomer in Canada. It's either way too cold in the winter when it's nice and dark, or way too light, way too late in the summer.
And
So I'm
perhaps with
very
all the
excited.
rain of late, that maybe it washed out all that moisture we've experienced since July and our record-breaking season of rain.
Oh my,
Yeah,
Hopefully it's all
yes.
gone.
Before we continue, we should maybe take a few moments for the two of you to introduce yourselves. Maybe we'll start with Bruce.
Sure. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it very much. It's an honor to be here this evening. My name is Bruce Waters, and I've been teaching astronomy since 1981. I've worked at the McLaughlin Planetarium for 10 years and having worked highly involved in Ontario parks since 1985. I am the founder of the Killarney Provincial Park Observatory, which is an active observatory available for public viewing and public programming throughout the warmer months, the spring, summer, and fall season, and have been involved in a number of astronomy related activities involved with the parks, as well as the Allan Carswell Observatory.
Thank you. And Ryan.
well, that's going to be tough to top, Bruce. That was a like very nicely scripted and everything. Like that was like I very concise too. I gotta do my best with what I got here. I'm Ryan Marciniak. I'm a lifelong science communicator and astronomer. I got a master's in astrophysics from the University of Western Ontario in 2011 now, and then started up a company in around that time actually called Astronomy in Action, where I just like to do planetarium shows for anybody who would listen to me. And for about 10 years, I did that. I also worked at the Ontario Science Centre for 5 years, acting as a birthday party host, floor staff, and eventually actually designing and researching exhibits, which was a really great experience. And then I took my company full time in 2019 and have not looked back since. Today, Astronomy in Action, I say we because we have several people who work with us full time, and we do all kinds of amazing events. We see over 200 schools a year. We do scouts and guides, and we do all kinds of amazing planetarium and space content. including we're quite sleepy right now because we're working at the or excuse me, the Canadian National Exhibition, which is going on as we speak. So lots of fun.
That's
Thank you
fabulous, Ryan,
for
and I compliment you on that. You know, I said I did such a great little quick synopsis, but I'm also 60, so I'm amazed at how much you're able to achieve in your shorter lifetime.
well, thank you. It's still a long way to go, but
Hmm.
our work is never done, is it?
Absolutely, absolutely, and things change so much.
No kidding. No kidding. And thank you, Julie, for inviting me this evening. I'm really excited to be back on radio. I have been on York Universe several, it feels like several thousand times in the past, but it's nice to get back every so often.
Yes, past host and friend of the show.
There you go.
Um, yeah, so I was so excited for tonight because public education uh, for astronomy is my jam. Um, the observatory at Killarney is one of my favorite places, and the astronomer in residence program is fabulous. Um, so maybe we can take a step back. Um, Bruce, you're the founder of the observatory. How did that come about?
Hmm. Which part, the founding of the observatory or the astronomer in residence program?
Well, we'll start with the observatory since I'm assuming that came first,
Absolutely.
and then the air program.
Certainly. So I've been teaching astronomy in the park since 85. And largely at the time, I was actually working at the McLaughlin Planetarium and I was doing public outreach on their behalf. And I bring up their 8-inch telescope all the time, which was lovely, but it also took a nice chunk of my car. And so after about 25 years to celebrate that, my wife and I, in concert with other active astronomy educators, Bill Gardner and Danielle Gardner, his wife and family, and others, we all sort of worked together to get a facility up and running in the park there. And so we completed that in 2010. And then we teamed up with Science North, a fabulous, outstanding science education facility in Sudbury, to do a joint program called Stars Over Killarney, which we've done periodically since 2018. And at that time, to celebrate that, we decided, well, let's up the ante and build another observatory. So there's two there now. And this one holds a 16-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain research grade telescope, as well as a 5-inch refractor. So the observatory has sort of been a bit of a lifelong ambition for myself, as well as people in the park. And it's become now established as a really great place for public programming on astronomy in a really dark sky. And that's the other thing as well, which is in 2018, Killarney Provincial Park was the first Ontario park to receive its dark sky preserve designation. So all those things kind of came together. As you might say, the stars are indeed aligned, and we got the observatory up and running.
Bruce, that answered my question because I was going to ask if it was actually a dark sky preserve site. I mean, it is uh, incredibly dark in that region. I actually used to vacation on Manitoulin Island all the time, which is not, maybe I won't call it a stone's throw, but it's maybe a small boat's throw from there. But very dark skies there as well. So I'm glad to hear that it was the first park to get that designation.
Yeah, there's now a number of parks, 3 or 4 parks, and I'm
Hmm.
sure that Ontario Parks is working hard to continue that. I mean, the nice thing about the dark sky designation, and I don't want to go off too much of a tangent, but it's all about not just preserving the dark sky, but it's an active, ongoing process in doing that. But it's also about public education, how we can do everything back when we come back to home into the GTA to, try to get the dark sky idea across to many people. We're preserving nature, we're preserving this for our eyes, and there's all kinds of discussions you can read online about why dark skies are so good for our health, not just seeing the stars.
Agreed. And yeah, we hear a lot about preserving uh the planet and things at the surface, but a lot of, the things that one could do to reduce energy, etc., would go a great way to reducing light pollution and allowing us to see the skies. No one goes out under a dark sky and goes, meh, it's boring.
Exactly, exactly. And it's kind of fascinating and sad. I mean, I think the famous thing that we all recognize, at least most of us do, is the big blackout we had in 2003, in which many people saw this strange thing that they'd never seen before from Toronto. And of course, we would know it as the Milky Way. But so many, and I would argue too many people have grown up never seeing the Milky Way, never having that incredible experience and that awe of what lies above if you could remove that nasty, graying, fogging activity of light pollution.
I could tell
Yeah.
you 1,000 stories, Bruce, about kids not seeing a true night sky being in Toronto. We do so many schools in the area, and we see kids, and they're often asking us, "What's that big streak in the sky? Like, is that supposed to be there?" And we say, "Well, yeah, that is." And most of us in the GTA haven't had the opportunity to see that. And that's for most large cities around the world. It's not a problem that's unique to us. So,
They must
something to
love seeing that similarly dark sky within your planetarium.
Oh my gosh, the best moment I think very early on is just that natural thing that all planetarium operators do, and that's go from a sunny day and very gradually bring out the sky. And I've gotten to the point where I just don't talk anymore, and I just want to listen to people's reactions and their awe and their. You can almost hear the tension and the reverence in the room if that was possible.
Absolutely. And I
Nice.
think actually seeing things like that, as well as seeing the moon up close in a telescope, or the
Mhm.
northern lights from a dark sky, or a brilliant meteor, those are real scientific awe moments that few other fields of activity allow people to experience. Like it's just this joyful outpouring of spontaneous emotion at something that people didn't realize was around or possible.
It was a car, we can bring a Carl Sagan quote in for anything, but this one was when you make the discovery yourself, you'll never forget it, right? That's
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
discovering that moon, discovering Saturn. Everybody gets to do that through a telescope. So very, very excited about well, I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm doing the no, okay. I'm not even going to spoil it. I'm doing the air program next month. I'm so excited, but we have to learn what that is first, right?
Yeah, so great segue. Thank you for that, Ryan. So, a number of years ago, we sort of were saying to ourselves, and when I say we, I'm talking about the Natural Heritage Education Program, which is now called the Discovery Program, as well as the management staff of Killarney Park, Jeremy Pawson and Sean, and we were all talking amongst ourselves and saying, we have this incredible telescope. It's a really great observatory. It's not, of course, as big and large and amazing as the Allan Carswell Observatory is, but it's incredible nonetheless. But it's in a really, really dark sky site. So we have the equipment, we have the facilities, and we have the public who just wants to learn more and more about what's around them, and allowing for a great complement from their experiences during the daytime in the park to extend to their experiences at nighttime. But we don't have the staff education there. There are lots of staff there who want to learn about astronomy and teach it, but they're not experts. They don't have years of experience. And to be honest with you, there's only so much people can learn. So the people there in the discovery team tend to be experts on what is it really important in learning in the first place: the geology, which is outstanding, the flora and the fauna, which is outstanding, the history of the place, etc. So we said, well, is there a way we can partner with a really amazing active educational facility who could sort of work with the astronomical community to bring really well-educated people up to this great park facility and this great observatory, and then have a natural extension? And of course, working with Allan Carswell was a straightforward, non-leap of faith. It was a straightforward activity to work with Dr. Elena Hyde and see if we could do something. And a few years ago was our first year, and Julie Tomei was one of our astronomers in residence. And the program has only gotten better and better every year, with adding a bit more automation and technology, making it easier for people to use, but also being able to leverage on previous years' experiences, what worked and what could be improved upon. So the astronomer residence program is basically designed to see astronomically knowledgeable people coming to a really great dark sky preserve using a great observatory, and that has all the latest technology, so we can live stream there or whatever, and running a bunch of various kinds of programs. So we do solar observing during the day. The park has a fairly decent meteorite collection, which connects the park well with the amazing geology that it also exhibits. And of course, we have drop-in sessions and programs at the amphitheater. So there's a wide variety of different kinds of astronomical topics and ideas and concepts that can be conveyed to the visitors to the park. So that's what the program is. And we welcome Ryan and Julie. We welcome you as well as anyone else who is so inclined to become one of our astronomers in residence.
The great thing
Yes.
that I see, about this program, other than just the fact that you get a variety of perspectives on astronomy, a variety of perspectives on science communication, is that it's very hard to have a career in something like science communication. There are plenty of research scientists, but there's only so much time in a day to do education. There are professional educators and some who focus on astronomy, but again, very few and far between. And I think the chance of any facility being able to have someone with that specific expertise work with them full time is really difficult. So I think it's a brilliant idea to have this kind of program, especially just and I said it already, but especially from the fact of getting different perspectives on the universe, different research perspectives, different science communication perspectives, different education perspectives. So I'm very excited, and what a great idea.
Thank you. We're happy to have you up. I'm looking forward to it. And I think as for those of you who have seen it and go to the site, the Astronomer in Residence site, all of our Astronomer in Residences have a blog section. And it's actually a
Mhm.
lot of fun to go in and read what's going on and what they're doing. And it doesn't just have to be discussions on astronomy. It's how are they enjoying the experience of being in one of the most beautiful parks in Ontario. Before us on the screen, we can see a lovely picture of Saturn. And Saturn's often been called the crown jewel of the solar system. Interestingly enough, that same description is being used for Killarney Provincial Park, being described as the crown jewel of the Ontario Provincial Park System.
Nice.
So it is a perfect marriage in heaven, pun intended.
Nice. Yeah, I was I guess my last clear night, because I was up last week. I just got back last night from Killarney. Um, Went over to Saturn, texted my children, "Hey, want to come see Saturn?" My daughter took me up on the offer. She came out, took a look through the telescope, pulled out her phone and started trying to take a picture through the eyepiece. And I was like, "You're setting yourself up for disappointment. That's a tough thing to do." And then I remembered I'd seen a doohickey in the
I
other
know the one.
dome. And I was like, "I wonder if that is what I think it is." So I ran over to the other dome and I grabbed it. And it's this cool thing to help you attach a phone to an eyepiece.
Yep, I brought that up last year, and I'm sure your daughter must have enjoyed trying to get pictures with that.
Yeah, we got some pretty good pictures with it. I mean, it's still a tiny little Saturn and a couple of moons. It's not like Saturn through a telescope, like the Allan Carswell Observatory telescope like we've
Of
got on the
course.
screen right now, but it's better than I've ever done with a cell phone through an eyepiece. So I'll definitely be pulling that out in future years because I've had people like my first year up, had people like trying their darndest to take pictures with their phones through the eyepiece.
Well, isn't it great that those doohickeys exist? I mean, it's if somebody has dreamed of it, the doohickey has been made. And isn't that fabulous, though, that it's now your daughter's discovery, right?
Yes.
That's
Exactly.
her
Exactly.
discovery, just like every person who's trying to take that photo so that they can show their discovery. And making that easier, I think, is wonderful. That's such a great keepsake, that it's that and a picture of themselves in front of this giant telescope that looks like a cannon. I think those are the two go-to photos.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the world's preeminent astrophotographers, amateur astrophotographers, who we actually had in Killarney last year, his name was Nico Carver, who does incredible work. He's pioneered something about taking pictures. Many people think of astronomers taking, 3 minute, 4 minute, 2 hour long photos. Actually, he will take a picture of the Andromeda Galaxy by capturing 3,600 1 second photos.
Wow.
And he's now shifted to using that exact doohickey so he can actually use his iPhone up to an eyepiece and seeing what kind of quality results he gets out of that. And it's quite outstanding what he gets because he'll just take thousands of 1 second pictures with an iPhone. He'll stack them together, gets rid of the noise, brings out the detail, the color, and gets incredible quality results. So technology, it keeps changing and makes our lives more interesting and better.
Have you seen some of the new unistellar EV scopes?
Yes.
They're fantastic, and I'm kind of interested in them because they have some options for outreach, which I'll get to in a second. I'm not going to make this too much of a commercial for them, but I've been looking at them. They basically do that stacking in their own software. They take images again and again and again gradually as you're pointed at a particular object using GPS, and that brings out more and more and more detail in that object. And it's especially useful in city skies where we can't see things like the Milky Way, many nebulae and galaxies are very difficult to see, mostly deep sky objects. And so it's a way for you to be able to see deep sky objects in even a light polluted environment. So I can only imagine how it would work in Killarney. But the really cool part that I saw about these is that you can connect to it with a cell phone and you can have up to 10 connections from different people just observing. And I thought, isn't that a great way to extend the eyepiece to multiple people? And I know it's not the same as actually looking through the eyepiece, but it's this really beautiful way to create a shared experience in space. So it's something I'm always keeping an eye on. So I thought I'd throw that in there.
No, it's a great idea, and they've become quite popular over the last few years.
Hmm. And that's also nice. I think, as technology improves, hopefully the price comes down as well because they're not that cheap.
It's an
But
interesting discussion. During COVID, we obviously were not allowing the public to come into the observatory. We wanted to make sure we had proper spacing. So we ended up reconfiguring the observatory for those 3 years or so, in which we projected images of what we were viewing onto a screen. And we actually found a lack of interest from the participants. And we attribute it to the fact that we are so now used to browsing beautiful images from Hubble or now James Webb and seeing things on screens that when a satellite went by one of the images that was live streamed. So these are images live streamed from the telescope out to the screen for 80 to 100 people to watch. When they saw a satellite go by, someone said, "Are you showing us real images from that telescope?" People didn't realize that. They just didn't make that connection that when they come in and actually look through the eyepiece, somehow people connect to that more. So we're trying to play around with that, Ryan. It's a really good discussion, trying to play around what's that right balance, or how do you find the maximum ways of using the technology to get many people viewing it versus having that connection to the physical eyepiece itself, which you would think shouldn't be the be all end all of connectivity, but some people find it a much more appealing way to view the stars.
it's the natural way. Natural way of viewing the stars. We all see even classical images of astronomers or artist conceptions of Galileo looking through a telescope. It's just something that we all associate with being a true astronomer. And so maybe there is that feeling of if you get to look through the eyepiece yourself, well, now you're the astronomer. You're the one in control of the telescope. Nobody else is. It's just your personal experience. So there is that balance between doing that and having these group experiences and these connective experiences with others. So we could talk about this, I'm sure, for hours.
Definitely.
Yeah. I
And
think
and
if
that's a
you're
go
if
ahead.
you're at the scope, you're doing the science, right? I'm doing a science. Wait
One
your
Yes,
turn.
science.
exactly. It's personal. It's a personal experience.
Hmm.
One of the things we've tried to do, and again, it just depends on how many people we've had at the observatory, but we try to, what's very important in Killarney is, remember, this is a provincial park. So how do we teach astronomy within the mandate of a park environment? Because the goal is to try to enhance the park experience, not necessarily focus on an astronomy experience. So we try in every way possible to connect that experience to something about the park. So for example, our Stars Over Killarney 2019 program was all about Indigenous astronomy, and we invited the Wickwumkwum people whose land that Killarney now sits upon to actually present their perspective on astronomy and to tell us their stories in their own language and in their own words. And so that was one way. But another way is just to talk about the formation of the planet, formation of the air we breathe, the water we see, the carbon in all the life forms around us, the hemoglobin based upon or containing iron in our bloods, and how that all came from the stars. So one of the fun things we do is we tend to go to show different objects, whether it be a galaxy or a supernova remnant or a cluster star, such as we're seeing on the screen, M13, and then connect people to those items so they walk away not just having that all moment of seeing something in the sky, but connecting it to them, to their experience in the park. And we found that to be really, really beneficial. So M57, we now see on the screen a fabulous example of a ring nebula, planetary nebula, known as the Ring Nebula. And we talk about the oxygen and the nitrogen that's actually creating the colors in the shells there, and how nitrogen and oxygen is the largest components in our atmosphere that we breathe, and that's where all that gas comes from. So I think that connecting people to the eyepiece and connecting them to an understanding of the context of the park in its astronomical background is hugely important.
So you mentioned the folks from Wikwemcom, and the two domes have Anishinaabemowin names. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So when we did our Indigenous Astronomy Stars of Killarney in 2019, we wanted to name our observatory. So we had built them in 2018, but they did not have names. And we had all kinds of people who had competitions for who can come up with the best names. And of course, you got things like the Big Dipper. Very boring. Sorry, whoever came up with that. The North Star, nice one, but again, kind of taken, kind of cliched. And we said, well, these observatories are really on indigenous land. And we really should find a way of honoring the people who are here before us, upon whose land they sit. So we actually had the names derived with the Wikwemukong Heritage Center. Brian Peltier, and as well as an Indigenous educator known as Will Moran, a knowledge carrier, a friend of mine, helped create the names with people who live in Wikwemukong. And the names are as follows. The smaller observatory is called Wasa de Babing, which means seeing far at a distance, which is what a telescope does. And Gche, Wasa de Babing, means the greater, seeing far at a distance. And the word Gachet means the greater, and it's actually used, you'll hear it in many phrases. I don't feel it's appropriate for me to repeat them, but that's where the names of the observatory comes from, because the Gachet Wasa de Babing has a larger telescope. So it inevitably will see further than the humdrum Wasa de Babing observatory that has the smaller telescope. So yeah, so we don't know, but we're probably one of the few places in the world that actually has observatories that actually have the local language naming for them. And we're proud of that. And we think we did the right thing there.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
it's
That's such a great way to connect it to, as you said earlier, the park itself, the land itself. Um, one of the one of the great things about astronomy is that it's so connected to human culture, especially things like constellations. One of the big changes that's kind of happened, especially in planetariums over the past 5 to 10 years, is that we're moving away from the IAU constellations, which are based on the ancient Greek, and getting to the idea of the fact that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of constellations from different cultures around the world. And it's really created a shift in how we do programs in general in the planetarium. For me personally, I tend to move to letting kids find their own and make their own constellations and connecting that to how our ancestors did that. So great job connecting that to the land. And I love the cultural aspect, especially being uh, living in Canada and living in this land, on this
Uh,
land.
Thank you very much. And it's again, it's only an honor to sort of bring that to fruition. I
Mhm.
mean, for myself, I first learned about some indigenous constellations back in the 80s when I first started working at McLaughlin, but the knowledge was hard to come by. Fortunately, there is a group of people called Native Sky Watchers, that's their name. And they are located, well, they're based in Minnesota, but they are an incredible group of knowledge carriers who provide a lot of wisdom and knowledge, not just revitalizing the constellations of those people who live in North America, but all around the world. And they've been fundamental in doing work everywhere. One of the leaders is Dr. Annette S. Lee, and she holds, or she used to hold, annual symposiums on Indigenous astronomy, which was incredible. So I was fortunate enough to go to one of those in person, but you can also, at least for a while, can go to them online. And it's incredible how much knowledge has been revitalized, but it also makes you realize how much we've lost. The great Indigenous astronomy educator Wilfred Buck was at one of these, and he said and I paraphrase, he said, every star or every grouping of stars that you look up in the sky at one point had some connection to an indigenous constellation, but unfortunately, we've lost all of that. So to be able to revitalize that in any way or to carry on that knowledge is some kind of way that we can serve as allies to the indigenous cause.
Yeah, I was during the solar viewing that I did last Wednesday, one of the campers who came, who's an amateur astronomer, was looking at the map of the Anishinaabe constellations, the work of Annette Lee, and was remarking that um, there's so much empty sky there on that
Yes,
map.
yes,
And that at
yes.
some point there must have not been so much empty sky.
And it's exactly that. It's almost like, the musicians who talk about the hearing the silence for the sound of the music. The silence is sometimes deafening. It's the same thing when you look at the maps, at least of the Ojibwe skies, but also of the Lakota Dakota as well. There's just so much gaps in what you see, and it's quite sad. And when us as non-Indigenous teach astronomy, we're very careful to focus on the patterns of the stars and the locations of the stars, but not the stories in the stars. I teach that that's not appropriate for us to be doing, that it's more appropriate for someone to find themselves an elder or a knowledge carrier, or go to a proper place to learn that from someone who is Indigenous, not from someone who's not. So we're very careful to teach that these things exist and then go out and learn on your own.
Nice.
Well, it's nice that there's more resources for that nowadays
Exactly.
as well.
Exactly.
We're really seeing that some growth in that. Um, I think I'm trying to remember I've got the book on my wall. One sec. Sorry, I'm
While Ryan's looking
bring this
for
up.
that,
There it is,
oh,
the Ojibwe Sky Star Map
yes,
Constellation Guide, and
that's the one
that's
by
Annette
Annette.
Lee, isn't it? That's the
That's
yeah,
correct.
Annette Lee, William Wilson, Jeffrey Tibbets, and Carl Godboy. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, like this is something that now we have as reference, which is really wonderful.
It is.
Whereas 10 years ago, 20 years ago, these didn't really exist in the mainstream. And it's a lot easier to get resources like this for a variety of different indigenous cultures and be able to connect the stars that we know to these stories and these, especially the beautiful artwork as well. So,
Yeah, and back to your comments about, we're not just today, we no longer just teach about the IAU or the traditional Greek constellations. We now look at other opportunities to teach culture of different cultures. Carl Godboy once said, we don't live in a land populated by, at least not in Ontario, not populated by whales and scorpions and these animals that are famous in traditional constellations. Instead, we have moose, or we have sandhill cranes, or we have fishers, or we have loons. And those tend to make up the constellations that the Ojibwe are familiar with. So it's good to learn about these different ways of understanding and appreciating the stars.
And you definitely get the connection, the land sky connection there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Ryan, you are about to, in a few weeks, head up to the park for the first time.
I am.
How did you learn about the program?
Honestly, I think it was you. I almost, Julie, I almost said it was your fault, but I consider it such a positive thing to get to do. I think, I being part of the Observatory team, and I've heard about your experiences up there a little bit in the past. But every year we get this nice call from Elena Hyde at York to, hey, this program is open. Let's fill up these time slots. Let's fill up these weeks with great astronomers. Tell your friends, tell people you know, tell your colleagues, and get as many diverse voices as we can up to the park. And honestly, I really wanted to do it last year, but it's the joys of having a business and young children make it a little bit difficult to schedule. So it worked out a little bit better this year, and I'm just thrilled about it. I've been looking forward to it for months, and I'm still debating whether I should go in, and this is where uh, I'll get the opinions of the two of you. I'm still debating how much I should prepare to actually go in, or how much do I just go in with an open mind and experience along the way. I recognize there's some preparation required.
I'm going to say yes. I think you should always have some programs available to you,
Oh
but
yeah.
you'll be inspired by what you see, and talking to the public will probably you'll chart your own course in your own direction from that. Julie, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are I prepared a lot my first year, and I've been resting on those laurels. Um, I have a whole document, all my sun background document, which is way too deep. No one ever asked me questions about everything that's in that document. That I now have. So the second year and this year, I can just pull that back up and read it. Um, for nighttime observing sessions, um, I have the bright telescopic objects, like little laminated spiral bound book, and the overlooked telescopic objects book. And I just went through the first year and put little tabs in the objects that I thought would be interesting. So that I kind of have my list of like interesting objects to go look at during a nighttime observing session. And now that work is done. The first 2 years I did prepared talks in the amphitheater for my third program. This year I did not have time to prepare a talk. And so I just suggested an Ask Me Anything session.
Hmm.
And Kate thought it was a great idea, and I was really relieved. Um, and yeah, I spent an hour answering people's random questions about astronomy and rainbows and water on Mars and everything in between. Um,
I love that. I
yeah,
think that's the best way to generate curiosity, or at least I would say extract curiosity from people, because we all have it. And I think there's one of the things that, and I'm apologize for constantly going back to the planetarium life. It is like 99% of what I do. One of the things we aim to do with kids in the dome is give them the comfort level to be able to ask any question that they've always wanted to ask, to give them the comfort level to ask something without being judged, with their question being respected, and giving them a real answer, regardless of how one might view the question. And so I think that's just so valuable. And I think it's also valuable for adults who, we have mixed audiences of kids and adults, families, occasionally, and they'll come in and the kids are the ones asking the questions because they're not shy. The adults are scared of looking foolish. They're scared of being thought incompetent for asking a question that they're genuinely curious about, and that shuts them down. So to be able to do something like that, Julie, is the goal, and I think maybe that's the direction that I'll at least I'll keep in mind.
We've talked a lot of ever, but some of the best talks have actually been sitting with everybody at the beach. Just sort of really just, maybe if we're lucky, hearing the odd sound of a loon off in the one of the beaches faces north, and if we're lucky, or if you're lucky, maybe see some northern lights or the odd meteor. And it just, to the point you were just saying, it just triggers this wow factor and spurs some questions like, what's a meteor? Or what's that thing in this moving through the sky? Oh, it's a satellite. What's a satellite? Why do we see them more in the summer than the winter? So on and so on and so on. So sometimes the simplest and non-technology presentations and the experiences can be the best.
it's
Using their
true.
imagination. I am actually very hopeful that we'll get some aurora activity. We've seen quite a bit this year since we're getting up to the peak of the solar cycle. So uh, hoping that it'll be a good time with some dark skies and some good views. I hope the sun's angry at us. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
The right level of angry, not
The
Carrington effect level, right?
No, not that angry. Hopefully not.
Um, yeah, going low tech definitely makes it so that the gremlins can't come and make
It
it
makes it
so
easier.
it
Yeah.
does.
I mean, sometimes I often have told people one of my very favorite astronomy tools I use today is not a 16-inch telescope. It's a pair of 7 by 50 binoculars. And even just, casually while wielding your way through the Milky Way and looking at the myriad of stars in your binoculars can be an awe-inspiring experience. And I mean, I don't know about you folks, and maybe this is a good question for both of you. I got into astronomy because a friend of mine's father, when I was in grade 4, and I lived up around Bayview and Steeles, and believe it or not, back when I was in grade 4, which would be 74, you could see the Milky Way in Toronto. Um,
Wow.
he had a 3-inch telescope, and he aimed it up at the night sky and showed me the Ring Nebula, which we saw earlier tonight in the slideshow here. And I was like, wait a second, you mean there's these things in the sky that I just can't see because my eyes aren't strong enough? I know it sounds crazy, but that was something that a grade 4-year-old really needed to understand and appreciate. So just sitting on the beach with binoculars and looking up the sky, maybe just giving a sky tour of binocular objects is a great way to get started.
It brings you back to your first time viewing the sky. I think, it brings you back to that moment, doesn't it? I think that a lot of people who've had that kind of, I mean, I think everybody's had an awe-inspiring introduction to the night sky of like, oh my gosh, there's actually more out there. Uh, getting a chance to do that as an adult almost brings us back, snaps us back to that moment. Because I mean, honestly, it's essentially the same sky as we saw 20, 30, 40, however many years ago. It connects us to our youth a little bit, to that first time that we saw something amazing in the sky.
Absolutely. So now I'm going to ask, hopefully I'm not putting anyone on the spot here, but Ryan, how did you get into astronomy?
Oh, geez, I was well, thanks for asking. I was in fourth grade as well, and there was a solar eclipse. This was 1993. May 93, there was a solar eclipse visible here in Toronto.
Hmm.
And my teacher got us a welding mask
Oh,
from one of the parents, I suppose, or somebody she knew. And we went outside and looked at the crescent sun and looked at this eclipse. It was pretty cloudy, but we were still able to see it. And I remember distinctively that crescent sun. And I was so fascinated that this is something that could happen in the sky, that the sky wasn't just this, oh, there's the sun, oh, there's the moon, oh, there's some clouds, that I did a whole project on eclipses and then started asking my parents for space books, and it just hasn't stopped after after several decades. And that's all it took.
excellent, excellent. Welcome to the field. Julie, how about yourself?
All right. I was in grade 1, and
Wow.
there was an astronomy unit in grade 1 back in 1986. Um, and I still have my giant piece of construction paper folded in half with the title of the unit across. I missed a syllable, so it says astronomy. Um, and I've gone through it. All it is are worksheets. But I was fascinated that there were other planets. That was
Yeah.
so cool. And then, like, I think maybe in grade 3 for the science fair, I did a solar system like science fair project at some point. In grade 6, we had our next unit on space, and I was like, this is the thing I want to do. This is what I want to study. And it sort of stuck from there. Um, and went off to York after high school
There you
and
are.
found myself at the observatory, which was the best place to be, in my humble opinion. Um, it just
Excellent.
kept going from there.
And yada yada yada. Here you are.
Yeah, here I am.
That's great.
20,
Despite years of hard work, and
25 years later, here I am.
But it's interesting, right? Because I once had a professor who was not in astronomy ask me, what's the value of teaching astronomy to children? He just didn't make that connection. And so my answer was simplistically, it's not just about looking at the night sky, but it's precisely about what the three of us were talking about earlier, those oohs and ah moments that inspire people into science and technology in general. It's not that they become astronomers necessarily, it's that they become turned on to things above and beyond themselves. And I think that's one of the biggest values of astronomy education is that we can relay a new spark of excitement and enthusiasm. And as you said earlier, Ryan, extract the curiosity
Hmm.
out of children and perhaps adults as well into thinking about things in ways that they hadn't previously contemplated.
Very well said. It's I'm going to add on to that a little bit, and the awe-inspiring thing. Uh, it's also nice to get a perspective on the place of our planet in the universe. That's something that you can't get from, you can get that from other sciences in a way. Geology, you can get a sense of the time scale a little bit, but I find with astronomy, we can understand how small our Earth is in the grand scheme, and hopefully put aside a little bit of our ego and self-importance in understanding this little blue marble in the cosmos.
The pale
Yeah.
blue dot. Yep.
Hmm.
I would say one of the most important things I learned in university was from Paul Delaney. I was feeling stressed, and he said, "You know what I do when I feel stressed?" It's like, "No, Paul, tell me." It's like, this was back when at the observatory we used to have a TV that we would pull out and we'd just put NASA TV on. And most of the day, NASA TV was just the Earth turning.
Mhm.
He goes, I pull out the TV, turn on the NASA channel, I look at the Earth turning, and I remind myself that whatever the problem is, it's so small compared to the Earth, compared to the solar system, compared to the universe. And that stuck with me. There are people who look at the size, the vastness of space, and it scares them. And there are people who look at it and go, "Oh, thank goodness. I'm one of those people."
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Jim Lovell of Apollo 8, the first mission that went around the moon on his way back, said, the Earth is like a blue and white oasis amidst the black vastness of space.
Mhm.
And it really makes you appreciate that the woes and the worries that we all have here are somewhat insignificant in comparison to what's existing in the universe today. Not that what we have isn't important, but it does give some context and perspective.
Agreed. So we were talking about children. And Ryan, I understand you're taking your family with you.
Yes, I am adjacent to several children. Uh, yeah, one of the great things about, oh, okay, so I'll preface this with a little story of this summer. We actually went to Germany for about a week and a half because there's an International Planetarium Society conference. And yes, there's an International Planetarium Society, but we have a conference somewhere in the world every 2 years. And this, I wouldn't have had an opportunity to go to this conference because I have young kids at home and I want to support my family. But the conference offered childcare grants and childcare for children of delegates. And
Amazing.
so we were able to make it work where we could take the kids and go to this
Wow.
conference and have a few extra days to explore. And I said to my partner after the we got back, and I said, was it worth it? Like I said, are you glad that we went? Did you feel, like you were on your own with the kids? Because I was, traipsing around this conference, all starry-eyed with colleagues. And and she said, why else would we have come to Germany with the kids? Why else would we have done this, right? It gives us a nice reason to do something as a family that we wouldn't necessarily have done, and kind of puts us out of our comfort zone. And so we try to take that approach with a lot of the things we do, my wife's a teacher as well, so we want to do the same with teaching conferences where we can say we're going to go to this place we haven't been before. Maybe it's not somewhere we would choose to vacation, but we're going to go and we're going to have this great experience, and it's going to give us adults an opportunity to do something great, and it's going to give us a chance to show our kids something great. And so that's one of the reasons I'm excited to bring the family to Killarney is that I get to support them. I get to support the learning that my kids get to do. And I get to show them what I'm like in my element, where I'm doing that thing that I love to do. And so I think that every chance I get to bring them with me and have them share in the experiences that I get to have, the unique experiences that I get to have as an astronomer and science communicator, uh, I want to share that with them every chance I get.
Nice.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's actually a really great thing about people who are eclipse chasers. I was working at the
Hmm.
Allan Carswell Observatory to be one of their eclipse chasers for this past eclipse, and my family and I observed it from Sherbrooke, which was a great experience. But a lot of people don't travel, and it's like, sure, I mean, they see the eclipse, and it is, for those of you who have not seen it, a truly awe-inspiring event that, it literally has made significant changes in cultural events on our planet, including the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. But it's only lasts typically between 30 seconds to, if you're really lucky, 6 or 7 minutes. But it also forces people to travel to these places they may not have necessarily considered. So the next one's in Iceland. The one after that is somewhere between Spain to Egypt. These are great opportunities to spend incredible times with your family and see some amazing or have some amazing experiences looking at natural phenomena. So yeah,
And
astronomy can be great.
ideally, yeah, absolutely. And ideally somewhere that you're not necessarily comfortable with going, or I wouldn't say not comfortable, but maybe wouldn't have thought of doing in the
Exactly.
past. There's
Exactly.
we get humans, we get in our patterns, and maybe we like to go somewhere warm once in a while. Maybe we want to go to some place that we've been before and kind of expand what we learned the last time we were there, that kind of thing. I think there's real value in taking yourself out of your comfort zone with the hope of doing something amazing, and you'd be surprised all that you can learn and experience um, that is unexpected.
Absolutely. But I feel like we almost need to do a public service announcement and just extend our apologies to our significant others for putting up with us spending so much time at nighttime.
Oh, so often do I do that. Oh, it's nice having little kids. They keep you up pretty late, so
Oh yeah, you get the
uh,
practice.
yeah, there you go. But I'm
Um,
I'm really excited to bring the family to
yeah.
Killarney. I think I mentioned earlier my partner's a big outdoorsy person. She loves to canoe and has done some trips in Killarney. So I'm
Yeah,
excited to go and share that with her as well and have her share that experience with us and the kids. So,
Nice.
there's just so much positive from it. I mean, the giddy side of me is getting ready to go and do some astronomy education and play with the telescopes and write the blog posts and do all that stuff and meet some interesting people. That's just the icing on the cake of all the other things we get to do.
definitely.
Do
And for
all the
those, oh, sorry,
discovery
go ahead.
programming.
All the discovery programming,
Yeah, it's fantastic. I
like
got
the
to do
different
some,
things to
yeah,
connect you with the park, is that?
yeah. All the programs run by the park.
Mhm.
So they'll give you like a, a 8.5 by 11 sheet, and all the programs for the week will be on there. And so
And
you
they have
can see
outstanding programs.
it's so good.
Fantastic.
I mean, geologically, Killarney is one of the most fascinating places on the planet. It has rocks, white quartzite, which is a rock that it was initially sandstone that went through metamorphosis into a metamorphic rock of quartzite. And then it has granite, which came from a pluton or intrusive igneous rock. And these rocks are 2.5 billion years old. At least the formation began 2.5 billion years old. And so you're seeing some of the oldest visible land formations on the Earth. So that by itself is pretty cool. And there's the third tallest mountain in Ontario. Silver Peak is in the park, and the water is beautiful. So it's an incredible place to experience hiking or canoeing or a bit of both. And for those who are not aware, the astronomers in residence actually can be accommodated or are accommodated in a place we actually call the apartment, but it's a fully furnished facility with kitchen and washroom and little dining room area and bedroom, of course. Or they can actually camp in the park if that's is what they prefer. Sometimes we prefer to do that ourselves and enjoy the camping experience. So all these options are open to those who come up and provide the public education.
That was such a great commercial for the park. Like I'm so much more excited to come. Not trying, not saying, it was a commercial, but you talked about so many great things that I'm interested in, like, seeing I love geology too. So, I mean, how can you not? It's, sorry, I'm gushing here. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's amazing.
yeah, the beach is fab. Your kids will have fun there. Also,
Hmm.
make sure you go to the main gate and make friends with Waffles.
Okay.
Julie and her family love waffles, and they're
My
not talking
kids
about the food.
love waffles. Waffles is a water snake, a
Oh.
northern water snake. Uh, and you can hold waffles and you can have your picture taken with waffles. You can wear waffles around your neck like a necklace, which my son was beyond thrilled. Beyond thrilled. But the first time we saw a water snake was actually in the lake at the beach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was really cool.
So you're just I'm writing down all of these things because I'm going to add them to my list of things to do. But what I do want to say to anybody who's listening who is even thinking of going to Killarney, please come up there when I'm up there the second week of September. I would love to see you, even just to take a look at something in the telescope, to talk about space, to enjoy the park. I would like to see as many people as possible. And I know there's a bit of a challenge to that going up to the park or any park the second week of September because kids are back in school. And it's kind of a busy week for a lot of families and a lot of people. But I still would love to see as many humans as possible and as many animals as possible joining me up at the park for my week there.
I mean, they don't
Eh,
start learning stuff till the third week of school, right?
Well, there you go. Yeah, nothing really happens for a little bit.
I'm
So,
not sure if we can say that properly, but
I'm
uh,
kidding.
and
I'm
I do want to
kidding.
say because Killarney does have a fairly high attendance of people camping in the park. But if for those people who are listening to us, maybe not from the Toronto area, but from closer towards Killarney, it's a great place to go for a day visit. If you're in Parry Sound or Sudbury or somewhere else, you can go into Killarney for the day and and with the evening take in Ryan's talk and head back home afterwards or and just enjoy your experience that way as well. You don't have to necessarily camp over there if you're not able to.
Yeah,
that's
it's a hard
fantastic.
park to get a spot in, isn't it?
It can be. It can be. And town is also spectacular. So if you can't get a camping site, in town is an amazing place. They have some really great facilities to stay overnight in. They also, I would argue, have one of the world's best fish and chip facilities as well, and some great bakeries and pastry places in town. So again, if you're not able to stay in the park, there are other options for you to still enjoy the park and still enjoy astronomy in the park.
Yeah. It, it's amazing, an amazing place. I have fun every time I go there. Um, Now, Bruce, I have a question. Because you've been
Yes,
going up to Killarney for a long time, yes?
indeed.
Okay, the building that the apartment is in,
Yes,
did it used to be a lot of smaller rooms?
yes, it was.
Okay.
In fact, right next door to the apartment, and I still do laundry in there. Um, we used to have a lot of what was called junior rangers. There was a really popular program called the Junior Ranger Program in Ontario parks. And I think it started in the 70s and it ended just like 5, 6 years ago, just around COVID time. And a lot of people who were in their, 16, 17, 18 years old up until maybe the mid 20s, I'm not an expert on this, got a really good first start in work, job experiences, and working away from home through the Junior Ranger program. And some of the facilities there that the astronomer residents walk by or sleep in, or are some of the old Junior Ranger cabins. There were more of them, but those are some of the cabins that used to be there. So
Okay.
there's a mess hall, not that we use it, but there is a mess hall not far from the building, and it can feed probably some in the area of 40 to 50 people, and that's of course was for the Junior Ranger program.
Okay. I stayed in one of those before the first time I went to Killarney.
Hmm.
Uh, we were there as part of the science communication program at Laurentian. We went for an event and we were staying in there. And so for the last 3 years, I've been going, this is definitely the place, but it didn't look quite like this.
No, the rooms are much, much smaller. It felt like you've been in a jail cell. Definitely.
All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour. As I knew it, we did not have a hard time filling up our show tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, you two.
Thank
It
you
was
very
a
much for having
blast.
us.
I blinked and it became 10 o'clock.
Right?
Exactly.
All right, everyone. You've been listening to York Universe, the astronomy and astrophysics program written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. Your hosts this evening have been Bruce Waters, Ryan Marciniak, and myself, Judy Tomei. You can always connect with us on socials and at our website, yorku.ca/science/observatory. Thank you for tuning in. Clear skies, and have a good night.